Right. I have increasingly begun to look at the left's behavior as a confession of a devilish hatred towards Christianity.
Of
This
course.
seems to be, and it's something that was obscured to me for many years, both because of a lack of information and my own ideological limitations. But if I'm right in looking at it this way, I wonder if you could help my audience, a lot of whom are atheists, understand what the left's goal is in the opposition to Christianity and how the argument goes that Christianity is essential, as the founding fathers pointed out, for a free society.
Again, we have to go back to Georgi Lukács. In 19, approximately around 1910, he tried to convince the leaders of the communist movement that our problem is not capitalism, it's Christian civilization. We have to destroy it first, because it's Christian civilization that protects capitalism. If we don't destroy the civilization, capitalism will be eternal. At first, nobody believed him, but bit by bit, the communist leaders got persuaded that he was right. And so their hate of Christianity is not without a reason. Christianity is the main obstacle to everything. First of all, Christianity is an obstacle to a life that's turned only to terrestrial objectives. The Italian ideologue Antonio Gramsci used to propose that what he called the total terrestrialization of thought. Human thought cannot go beyond the limits of earthly life. Because if it goes beyond, well, people start having ideas, and if they believe God, they acquire some, they become brave, they don't care to be martyrs, and so on. But if people's lives are limited to a terrestrial perspective, they think only of their belly, and they become cowards and easy to control. This is the idea.
Right. And particularly if hedonism takes over and you think of your belly and your sexual life, and if those in charge are, as you say, psychopaths and sadists, then their hedonism is controlling you, and your hedonism is involved in not fighting against that control. So it's like a perfect storm of escalating oligarchies.
Of course, when a guy gets hysterical, he believes anything. He was born as a man, he wants to believe he's a woman, it's okay. But then he changes his mind. No, I'm not a woman anymore, I'm a man. Oh, it's okay. Everything is okay. You can have sex with a 5-year-old boy and say it's love. Now, how can it be a love if it is not directed to a person, but to an age, to a certain stage of his physical development? If it was love, you could go on loving him when he was 40. Can you practice pedophilia with a 40 years old guy? Of course not. So when the guy reaches a certain age, the lover abandons him, leaves him, and gets another one of the same age. And so all these concepts are completely crazy. But if you are hysterical, you can believe anything. Anything you say, you believe.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but it's a funny thing that has struck me as well that, of course, Christianity is foundational ethic in many ways, is the acceptance of free will. And if you are on the left, there's a lot of environmental determinism that comes out of the left, whether it's, you're defined by your race or your gender or your class and so on. And they promise you freedom from the determinism of what used to be in the past economic determinism. Now, of course, in Christianity, you have free will through the soul. The problem is, of course, when you strip the divine and the soul out of the universe, it's easy to look at human beings as robots, as just another piece of physics that happens to animate itself. And that takes away people's responsibility. Then if you're poor, well, you're poor and you end up at the bottom in the same way that a rock dislodged from a mountainside ends up down in the valley. It's not your fault. It's just an action of physics. And then there is this desperate desire to overturn this inevitability. And I think that this question of free will remains foundational to the left's opposition. Because whenever I talk about the difference between the voluntary poor and the involuntary poor. Like the people who are poor through no fault of their own, who I think should deserve charity and help, and the poor who are poor as the result of bad decisions, as the result of poor choices, as the result of bad habits, say, that they won't overcome. People get really angry on the left when you talk about the possibility that the poor might to some degree be responsible for their own condition. And I think it takes away that determinism that they love so much. Now, of course, the central planners are considered to be free of this determinism. They have free will, and so it's all contradictory and nonsense. But this is, I think, when I became a public philosopher, I spent a lot of time fighting for the concept of free will with a lot of people who were either leftists or atheists who fought enormously hard against this concept of free will. Do you think that is what they're fundamentally fighting against when it comes to Christianity, or is it something I'm missing?
Well, in the Christian and classical frame of reference, free will is only a part of the total structure of reality. But in this new conception, free will is everything. You can do whatever you want. So there are no limits. And I can ask, how do these people, these leaders and mega billionaires and so on, and intellectuals, manage to persuade people of such stupidity? Well, the secret is this. Psychopaths have an abnormal psychological aggressivity. There and lots of psychological power. They intimidate people by their very eyesight and their ways of speaking. So, Groucho Marx used to ask, after all, will you believe me or your own eyes? Psychopaths make people believe me, not their own eyes. And this is the mechanism of psychopathical persuasion that turns people into hysterical. From the moment you start believing what you are said and not you are seeing, you are hysterical. And you can believe anything. And this is the mechanism. They are controlling lots of people by this dirty trick of psychological aggressivity. Will you believe me or your own eyes? Oh, you.
Right. Now, it's, to me, a somewhat tragic coincidence that at a time when the left has dominance over so many cultural and educational institutions, we talk about higher education, but they have, of course, taken a significant control over primary schools, kindergartens, junior high schools, and so on. At the same time that the left has so much strength, the Catholic Church in particular seems to me to be faltering considerably. And whether Pope Francis has been captured by globalists or whether there's some other motivation that is going on, naivety, I don't know. But this, when the enemy is strong and those who are charged with defending the West seem to be in a peculiar position of weakness that does not bode very well, in my view.
The Soviets, they started infiltrating people in the Catholic Church in the 30s. And it took a long time to generate the effect. You know a book by a lady called Bella Dodd, The School of Darkness? He was one of the KGB agents that work in this operation, infiltrate people in the Catholic Church. He said, I myself infiltrated 3,000 people there. And there are many thousands of agents working this. So now in the Catholic Church, you cannot know who's who. I take a precaution. I don't trust anybody. I go to the church, I see the mass, I pray, and I go running. I run away. I don't talk to anybody. Because I don't know. This guy can be a danger of the KGB. We don't never know. I don't know even if the Pope is a real Pope, because there is reasons to suspect that he was put in the chair of St. Peter by George Soros and others. There is a Catholic traditionalist newspaper called The Remnant. They have publishing a lot of stuff, very serious stuff about this. So people ask me, well, this guy is the Pope or he's not? If the church will depend on me to answer this, she's lost. I don't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean, the church has the extraordinary power of excommunication to threaten those who seem to be working hand in glove with the leftists to destroy Western civilization, and the church could have an enormous amount of power in solving that. But yeah, as you say, I mean, whether the Pope was placed there or not, it's hard to see how it would be different either way in terms of how he's acting.
Can you imagine the consequence for the Catholic flock when millions of people are receiving the communion from the hands of excommunicated guys? Huh? This is so fearful, so terrible, that people have got scared to imagine. They don't want to think of this because this is too bad to be true. But it's true. Right. I have been calling some bishops here as excommunicated. What they answer? Nothing. They're quiet. Well, you're not a bishop, you are excommunicated. And I said this to many of them. They cannot answer anything. They know they are excommunicated.